honestly, we started labeling things so when people called and go, that black and green
one.
desk.
Yeah.
I went to numbers for a little bit, and I'm like, I can't keep up with this.
Yeah,
we put 5 more on
Chinese
there.
restaurant. We'll take the number 55.
That's what it felt like.
46.
They were like, how much for the number 1 with the side of right? Yeah.
Today's episode is brought to you by Canadian Metalworking and Canadian Fabricating and Welding.
For those that don't know, Canadian metalworking is more than 100 years old, covering all aspects of milling, machining in the Canadian marketplace. Canadian Fabricating and Welding, not as old, but we like to think provides the same type of coverage on the fabricating side of metal manufacturing.
What you get in one magazine is double the value.
2 for the price of 1, which is really free if you're qualified, so I guess that doesn't make sense. But anyway.
There's still that value there.
There's
We've got Joe Thompson and Rob Coleman in that lineup. You cannot beat it.
And Lindsay Luminoso,
That's
our favorite
right.
associate editor.
That's our frontline skaters right there.
There you go. They're ready to go. So if you want to become a subscriber, visit CanadianMetalworking.com.
CanadianMetalworking.com.
Hello. Dan Davis, editor of the Fabricator magazine, joined by Jim Gorzik.
Hello.
And Gareth Slager.
Hello.
Hello, everybody. We're doing an intro for our conversation with the DiVito brothers of Lake Zurich, Illinois. And they are furniture designers. Started from scratch. Very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
No real background. Didn't really
background.
Do trade school. Didn't really take classes in high school. Walked away from what they were doing. One is a graphic designer. The other
Stockbroker.
Yeah.
Finance.
Yeah. So they're making their way and doing okay. How you like that?
Nice one. Cheers, shout out.
So as we're talking about, obviously one of the first things they jump into is welding. And as we're talking about welding, we thought we'd just discuss this new piece of art that has crept up on internets everywhere. It would be a small independent film called The Welder.
Yeah,
The Welder.
a horror movie.
Yes, in a very graphic type of horror movie.
Yeah, it's kind of like in the vein of like Saw or Hostel. I think that's one of Jim's favorite movies, actually.
Right.
Hostel.
It's the Hostel. Yes, that whole movement of movies. Yes,
Yeah.
big fan.
Hostel series, yes.
They're great when you travel to watch.
Yeah, I was
going
going to say, Jim loves watching Hostel movies when he's traveling for some reason.
We're in Mexico, coming back from FabTech Mexico, and the question was at our 4 a.m. pickup, did you sleep okay? And Jim's like, no, not really. And I go, why? He goes, I was watching Hostel 2.
I was, and how can you not be dragged in? You've seen the first one.
So I didn't. The first question was, did you have to see the first one to understand what happens in the second one?
That answer
And
is
the best,
no.
Well, the best was you attempted to explain it to me.
Right.
And it was much more involved. You were very into the movie. Your plot point coverage was very, very detailed.
It's amazing, and we have not seen The Welder yet.
No, it comes out by the time this episode is released, the movie will have come out, but it comes out February 24th. I think the same day
as Cocaine Bear.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we can just pay for one and go see the other one.
Yeah,
And sneak in.
Sneak.
There's got to be a double feature somewhere.
So
showing
tell
these.
me,
Right.
what does the small recap say?
So I think it's essentially about a couple that goes on vacation.
Always a bad idea.
Yeah, always.
See? Hostile, anyone?
Yeah, never go on vacation.
Right, see?
Just to like a somewhat assumingly quiet abode somewhere, and there's a weird neighbor who's, I think, a deranged doctor, which I'm pretty sure Saw and Hostel also involve deranged doctors.
But our doctor enjoys the metal arts? Is that what?
I think he.
We're to
well,
assume?
I think he enjoys welding people together.
Right.
That's what.
We don't want to give away too much of the
Which
plot.
would necessarily not. Oh wow!
Yeah.
Human centipede.
Yeah, kind of in that vein too. Yeah.
For those of you who have never seen Human Centipede, just stop right now and go read a book.
Yeah. But he wears a welder mask.
Yeah.
That actually adds, like an old school welder mask that adds to the frightening aspect.
Now
of
this will be the point where we're wondering whether people that actually run Fabricators and Manufacturers Association listens to this thing.
Yeah.
I think we've set back the the whole campaign to improve manufacturing's image about 10 years with this discussion.
You know,
There might be some flags flying after this.
Yeah, so maybe this is our last episode. I'm not quite sure. But we wish the whole cast of The Welder nothing but luck.
and you know, we can't be for certain that Rafa, our welder editor, is not the actual welder in this movie. They don't reveal his face
We don't know.
I will
in
say,
the trailer.
from what I just saw, he seems to be over 6'2". And
the movie character.
Yes.
Right.
Listen, Tom Cruise is like 5'5", and they make him look tall.
Yeah.
You know
Preacher,
what? Those
right?
directors know what they're doing. You're
Yeah.
correct
Yeah.
there.
All angles.
They got to wear they stand on a soapbox, I think. But
Yeah, I feel, I don't know how I feel about this stuff. You watch horror movies?
Not too many.
only when he travels.
Just when I can't sleep when traveling.
Only those affiliated with the torture porn segment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you going to get us banned on YouTube again?
Yeah.
But that's essentially what it is. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. I'd tell you how bad I am. I was watching, what was it? It was, my son's going to see the movie this week. I forget what it was. But anyway, I was
Welder?
just watching a preview for it, and the jump scare, I threw my beer all over me. I was home sitting on the couch watching a preview for it. Oh, it was Megan. That's what it was.
Oh, one of,
I
like-
can't
The
I can't even
shark
survive.
movie?
And that thing's like more of like, I think like a
The Meg.
goof. No, with that little
Oh.
doll like Chucky.
Oh, the AI.
Yeah. So I can't even survive the preview, much less the whole thing, which I'll probably end up watching anyway. But that's about as close as I can come, is like some type of like comedic or adventure,
Mhm.
like straight up just like something bad's about to happen and someone's about to lose a limb, man. I can't do that.
You know what? There's another movie called The Welder that came out in 2015, according to IMDb, and it's also a horror movie.
Man.
The synopsis
we
is
have
a
to
story
do
of a-
better.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Well, we know one thing for sure.
You know
It's
what?
not a horror story. When the DiVito brothers are talking about designing a part for their
yeah, they
customers.
make some really cool stuff.
Yeah.
They do. They would be perfect in a romantic comedy about
Yeah.
welding.
Right.
So
Well,
that
Interesting.
is not covered in this conversation, but we think you'll
No.
enjoy it.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
the first part of a 2-part episode with them.
Right? It was so good. Double up.
Yep.
We'll get back to the romantic comedies another time. Okay, enjoy. The Fabricator Podcast is presented by Nuts, Bolts, and Thingamajigs. As the foundation of the Fabricators and Manufacturers Association, NBT is helping the next generation discover their future across the country in manufacturing through hands-on camps and scholarship programs. You can invest in tomorrow's workforce by visiting nutsandboltsfoundation.org. One more time, nutsandbolts.org.
Foundation.
Hello, welcome to today's episode of the Fabricator Podcast. I'm Dan Davis, editor-in-chief of the Fabricator magazine, joined by,
Jim Gorzek.
also with the Fabricator magazine,
Also at the Fabricator
not
magazine.
a random person off the street.
That's right.
And our guests today are Rob and Anthony DiVito of iRcustom.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you having us.
Yeah, we if you read the most recent issue of the Fabricator, which doesn't help you because this is not going to be timely, but in our February
you should
issue,
have read it by now.
we have the DiVito brothers featured in the back page, and this is kind of an interesting tale of two guys that found their way into fabricating who probably didn't know they would end up being there. So much like many people who think about trying to promote manufacturing as a career choice, sometimes the career just finds them. And thanks for joining us, guys. And maybe if you want to describe what IR is all about.
I was going to say, which one wants to field this question?
I
It
was
depends on the day.
Basically, you're not off very much from the whole kind of stumbled into it and fell into it, honestly. We started out in graphic design and all that, and currently we do mostly modern desks, modern tables, conference tables, mostly office furniture, some dining tables here and there. But we specialize in one-off, not highly manufactured. Everything's custom. Mostly hardwoods, steels, powder coating, the whole nine. But we started out, in the reclaimed industry, like a lot of people do, the easy way in. You kind of pick up the tools that you have and start there. And we kind of just did what we wanted to do. Have no background in metalwork, have no background in woodwork. You know, we jokingly say that our father can barely change a spare tire. You know, people always assume that we have a background in it. But like you said, it found us more than anything. That's for sure.
Yeah, being the two of us, everyone assumes we have this big family background in some kind of construction business. Like, no, we, kind of went different paths and ended up with this, and we were doing this just for ourselves. And then people saw it and were like, "Can you make me one?" Like, sure, I guess. And then being crazy, we just kept getting bigger and bigger equipment, and
we built our equipment around what we need to do, but when I first started doing it was graphic design. Like I said, I had no idea if I could build this stuff.
So you were just kind of like just drawing.
I was just drawing. I liked angular things, very modern, clean things, and we've always kind of leaned towards that aesthetic, and we found that the reclaimed was a little bit difficult for us. And I actually had a friend that I would just post on my stuff, and he was like, "Hey, I see you posting those drawings. Like, you build me a conference table?" And we were like, I think so.
And thus we end up in the 36th floor of the U.S. Bank Tower in L.A.
Yeah.
That could be a episode on its own. That was an escapade.
Oh.
Yeah,
so
trial by fire.
From your Illinois work location.
Yeah, this one we were 1,200, 1,500 square feet at that point.
Yeah,
we just delved into everything. It was our first real. We did aluminum work. It was easier to work with.
I think we finally got a forklift like 2 months before that job.
Yeah, because we were like, we're gonna get a big steel order. That's gonna be hard to unload.
You order 6-7 tons of steel, and we'll hand unload it. Yeah. You should see the driver. Well, not a happy guy.
Yeah, let's back up. And what were you doing prior to doing this?
He's probably got a better definition of what you were doing prior.
Yeah, I was in finance. I traded stock options for a number of years. And Rob was out in Colorado at the time doing some graphic design and living in the mountains, and decided he wanted to start a t-shirt company of all things. So when you guys say we should put that on a t-shirt, we laugh because I think we may have literally just sold our last piece of printing equipment within the last 6 months. It kind of sat up in storage. But so we did that, and then finance world goes crazy, so kind of somehow made this weird transition of like, I'll come in a couple days a week into a shop and help you. And suddenly we're both there way more than full time. Because
is a good problem.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things, and the biggest misconception with us is like that we have this large company with a number of people. It's like, no, we're just two idiots. We just take on so many hours. It appears there's a lot more people.
Right.
It's just a never ending.
When was it that maybe you left your full-time gig and Rob, did this become your full-time gig almost right from the start?
So I was freelance basically from the beginning, finding the graphic design jobs, tampering all through there, or going through that field, trying to find a gig. And we took a liking to printing. So I was like, we have some of this stuff, let's upgrade it, let's see what we can do. That quickly turned to realizing that was a race to zero in that industry. And we were I think we can do something different. Let's do something that we enjoy. We don't see a future in it, And I proposed it to him. He was going downtown to just lose money every day, it seemed like, because he was losing
his own money or others? Or
hopefully
both?
Other people's money, but probably both.
I worked in private equity, so it was a small group of guys, so a pool of where it mattered, but was painful.
Right.
And, it is, even to this day, people are like, isn't owning a small business stressful? I'm like, you know what's stressful? Waking up in the middle of the night going, I just lost a bunch of money in Japan. This kind of... It's a different everyday kind of routine, but it kind of keeps going the same way for us. Even in printing, we were like, all right, we're going to find somebody to print this for us, right? Oh, we don't like what these people do. We don't like them doing it this way. So we just bought equipment.
Yeah.
And then this has gotten even crazier because now we have gone to our skill set to the level of we're going to build our CNC machine to cut things the way we want it to work.
Wow. Wow.
It's one of those.
Sorry. What equipment did you get into first, and maybe take us through that?
Well, we had a hand plasma, and then we had, what was it, a Hobart welder?
That was
hand plasma.
That was after a few months of actually like putting every single penny we made.
Yeah, that was like the big investment. That was if we put this $1,000 into this hand plasma machine and this $800 or whatever into this Hobart, we better figure it out.
Okay. Yeah.
You know,
like what year was that?
That was like what, 15 maybe.
Okay.
Around that time.
Yeah, about 7-8
2015?
years ago.
Yeah.
Something
So it was
that,
like, okay, let's make this work, and that's kind of what it is with every piece. Every piece of tooling, we're like, all right, if this doesn't work, what can we use it as a backup? You know.
Yeah.
Now,
But
if the
we
guys
started
down the
there.
street at Trump, if they want to bring us a laser, yeah, guys, we're willing to talk to any of them.
And they do have a forklift.
Yeah, we can
So-
unload it.
and I'll
We
tell you
figured
what,
out how to-
Nissan material handling.
I'm even willing to go out and rent the telehandlers if you want to bring the
yeah,
machines
if it's
in.
big enough, we'll get it. But yeah, it works out where, you know, we started there, and then once you get into metalwork, it's kind of one of those eye-opening things. Like, we always did things in wood, and you limit yourself in wood. Once you get to the end of wood, you're like, all right, this can't really be stable. Building this kind of table with wood, you need this much. Once I got into metal, I thought metal could stand up to anything. You know, I was like, oh, I can do this, and it won't bend. Yeah, well, you find out your limitations pretty quick. But trial by fire is basically the name of our game.
I think we should rename the company.
Yeah.
Literally, we like to
Maybe
jump
make a
in.
t-shirt.
We always say the best way to learn is to mess it up a few times, you know. So it's always worked out for us. Luckily, we've kind of mitigated major failures in our time, but I mean, they happen, you know.
Maybe we could call it burned and learned.
There you go. Luckily, I got all 10 fingers
I was gonna say,
and 10 toes.
I don't enjoy burning myself anymore. Right?
You don't want that.
Yeah, like, and it's amazing when you get older. I know we were kind of having a conversation off camera before, but when you get older, like, you start wearing all the PPE.
Yeah.
And like suddenly you're like, hold on, I'm gonna go get my gloves.
Yeah, you realize what it's for. Yeah.
Like, yeah, and
even recreational stuff. Like, I play 16 softball. I don't Chicago
Oh, yeah,
thing,
yeah,
you know, no
yeah.
gloves.
Yeah.
Right.
I took one off the end of the finger, and my finger was crooked. And I'm like, I'm figuring this out. I can't deal with this. I can't have a crooked finger. And
Yeah.
all the old men are like, you're done. It is what it is.
Yeah.
They
he
were wrong.
3D printed himself splints in
I busted out my
different
3D printer, and I printed out splint for my finger. I was
to
proving
keep
people
it straight
wrong.
as it went, like, over
Yeah.
time. There
I
was like a
literally thought it
slight
was gonna be
angle
like a lethal
differential.
weapon type thing where you like broke
Made
it
a
on the
bionic
field.
finger, yeah. No, just a splint, but see it? It's straight now.
Oh, that's
Ain't nobody
You
hating
have
on
a very
it.
lovely finger.
Exactly. Thank you. But yeah, it's
That's
one of
kinda
those things
disturbing.
where we just dive in, you know.
Wait, I've
but-
seen those hands before.
Yeah.
That
Like
hand model.
Zoolander. Yeah.
Oh, but going into fabrication, that's even, Rob has done 3D modeling and things forever. And now we'll 3D print things. We'll 3D print fixtures, pieces, and then, you know, it gives you the ability to do things very quickly. Rapid prototyping is amazing. Like, I didn't, honestly, a lot of the things, I'm like, yeah, sure, go print that out of plastic. It'll
It's
work.
tiny scale, but I love it. I just
But-
have my modded out Ender 3. You know, it
Yeah.
prints multiple materials, little tools, jigs, all things around the shop.
And then you know that
Amazing.
a piece that you want to get milled out of aluminum or, you know, you're going to bend it up, that it's actually going to work versus like, well, the picture says this is good.
Right.
I've done that for a long time.
Right.
Says it'll line up.
So what was the most challenging thing to getting started and being able to actually turn this thing into like a business?
I think just getting your foot in the door, honestly, getting that reach. Because for us, I mean, our parents and our grandparents would always ask, like, how do you get clients? If I had the answer, I'd give it to you. I'm always trying to find it. But we've always been online. We've always been online presence. Instagram's huge. Pinterest is our secret little horse that we love. You know, we post on there. It's all word of mouth, and I guess our stuff kind of is visually makes a statement. And we try to do it that way for the marketing of it as well. So.
It seems like it's perfect means to get out something that is visually should be somewhat compelling.
Exactly. And I mean, the 3D rendering, from the very beginning, we said minimal to no inventory is the ideal thing.
Yeah.
You know, if we don't have to build the idea, if I can put together a good enough rendering to get that to the client and or the prospect client, if I can put that out there, that saves us time, headache, the whole nine. And there's a lot of times I design things, I look at him, I go, hey, you want to come in here and look at this? He comes in and he's like, what's wrong with that? I'm like, that looked bad, right? He's like, yeah, that looks terrible. I'm like, okay, good.
I will, and we used to build things on spec, like, this should look good, and everyone does projects, right, where you're like, this is going to be great. You build it, and you're like, that is hideous.
Missed the mark a little.
Throw that away. Don't take a picture. We never did that.
Is that the version of Here, Hold My Beer? I think I
Yeah,
can design
basically,
this.
exactly.
Kind of, yeah.
It's,
And I think in the beginning, that was definitely one of our hardest things was like, we didn't do as much 3D modeling. We didn't have that knowledge, didn't know how to go down that road. And it's kind of hard to tell somebody, don't worry, we'll make you a beautiful table.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't worry. Here, you like this one? Okay, I'll make something like it. Give me a few weeks. I'll get in contact with you.
Yeah,
You nuts?
our
Like,
first few clients, I look back and I'm like, I can't believe you guys gave us money.
Yeah, they're very trusting.
You
to say
guys,
the least. Yeah.
Well, I think that ties into being somewhat likable, and you're able to kind of demonstrate, at least in a 3D model, what you might aspire to do. Which leads me to, like, when I asked that question originally, what was the most challenging? I assumed you'd go toward the actual doing it part of it. And to me, I find that fascinating that wasn't the answer. And y'all sound fairly
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 competent.
y'all sound like
We fake it well.
You mentioned milling, like it seems like you've been at it for a while, and frankly could have a conversation with somebody who's probably 20 years in the field or something.
Well,
like
you know,
that.
I mean,
like, how did you get to that point?
A
a
lot of
YouTube
missteps.
University too.
What was
YouTube
that?
University.
Okay.
That's a big one for me.
Yeah.
Like we said, we learn by our mistakes.
Yeah.
But if I have no idea about anything,
Right.
first place I'm going is to YouTube, and I'm typing it in and seeing what they have.
Yeah.
You know, I'm one of those weird people that'll sit there and listen through a droning video of a guy talking very monotone for a
Right.
couple hours. I can learn something from that. I don't know how, because I can't sit through anything else, but that I'll sit through.
When you started using Fusion, it was painful for me. You're like, here, listen to this and see.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Fusion 360.
I'm like, you got to learn this
tutorials,
software.
yeah,
I'm like,
it's-
I can't do it.
Yeah.
Like, I can't. Like, when they start going through menus, he's great at that. And I'm like, I have no idea
Right.
what just happened here.
It is funny though that you say, like, I didn't even think about that as an answer, honestly. The doing part, because I think we're just so used to diving in, and
Right.
honestly, I don't want to say we've always came back above water, but
Yeah.
like we've always found our level there and found a good place and found our limitations quickly.
Yeah.
We might come in with lofty ideas and think like, we're gonna be able to do this, and then you're like, okay, our machines can only do this much.
Right.
Well, there's definitely that in the planning phase now.
Right.
We got in over our heads in the beginning where you'd be like, oh, how do we now reinforce this, gusset this? How? And you were going back in stages where now we discuss it. Like he said, I'll walk into his office and go, nope,
Yeah.
not happening.
Simulation's great. When you build a conference table that's just levering out there and you're like, I think that'll hold. And then you get it built and you're like, that didn't hold. Now what do we do?
It fell over.
You will see certain things in materials that will amaze you. Like, the general public has no idea, and I'm confident in saying that because I had no idea. We got into it and we're like, it's steel. It's not going anywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it will. Watch this.
No, you just think it's, you're like, oh, wood. Wood had nothing. When you're little, you're like, wood will do everything. Then you get older, you're like, oh, I need metal. And then you're like, wait, metal ain't like, it's not the end all be all. It won't hold everything. I wish I could just put stuff into the ground and watch it like lever out there. Like, that's my ideal design, but it's not reality. If you want to have somebody sit on that bench, it ain't going to work.
Right.
And if you've seen some of our early designs, a lot of them have bolts and things, and people always assume they were bolted to the ground. They never have been. None of our pieces are ever bolted to the ground. But we were so concerned with certain things tipping over that we'd put 1/2-inch plates underneath the whole thing.
Yeah, just to add that little bit extra
Just so
weight.
it was like heavy. We were like, well, if there's that much weight down, the center of mass, like, you got to lower it a little bit. And
Could have made a
we're
career out of
okay.
YouTube videos of people flying off the teeter-totter.
Oh, yeah, the forklift driver.
We built a teeter-totter on the table.
We've
love
had
fan
some
videos.
in the shop. I think OSHA would not approve of certain
There's
ones of
a
those,
few
but
things,
hey,
yeah.
Luckily, they're not fishing in your pond.
No.
They're after the bigger guys.
That's why we like it, just us,
Yeah.
They were like, we're small enough, ain't nobody going to file complaints about us.
it's funny that he says we're small enough. Our original neighbors, he'd come over and be like, hey, it's back like living at home. We're like, what are you talking about? He's like, you two swearing at each other, throwing things?
Can't do that with employees.
Like, oh, sorry, walls were thin.
So obviously being brothers, and you're, I'm assuming 50-50 partners?
My wife
somebody-
owns a very small percentage.
He's the
so-
money guy, I don't know.
Oh, okay. Well, no, so somebody's got to have, is there someone that has the final say versus the other?
My wife's
or-
the deal breaker.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So if there is a dead it comes to blows, we don't agree.
And you would think
She's-
she's heir to his side, but
No.
I was just going to say, right, that can, yeah.
I've been with my wife too
He's
long,
the
been married
design
too
guy.
long.
yeah. She's been around long enough to know.
She just, you're wrong. Okay.
Nice.
No, yeah, it's a good work dynamic. I know a lot of people are like shy away from working with family
Right,
and all that
right.
stuff, but we're completely opposites, me and him.
Yeah.
We work really well together, and we each have our own little sections of what
Right.
we do. Like I would say when you're like, are you guys 50-50? I'm like,
Yeah.
maybe. So
Call the
I
accountant.
wouldn't pay taxes on businesses, like at the end of the year, they'd be like, yo, it's a ton of money. I'd be like, for what? So like we work really well together, and we've kind of interlaced over time where we have ideas of what each other are doing now. But in the beginning, it was like, you do this, I do this, and we'll meet in the middle. But even when it comes to metal work, I'll be doing the welding, he does all the grinding and finishing work. So it's a good cohabitation in the shop.
Yeah. So I remember the story that Rafael, our coworker Rafael Guerrero, wrote, and there was a mentioning of how you kind of specialize in certain things, but yet y'all both like the hands-on portion of it. Why is that from maybe each of your perspectives?
I think it was a part of necessity, honestly, in the beginning. It was like, all right, well, and it still is somewhat necessity to the point that from the first call, email, whatever it is, all the way to installation, it's me and him you're talking to and me and him that are showing up. We've had people like hotshot drivers, things like that, that'll take deliveries for us. But besides that, it's us. We're going to be there. And I think it's more necessity that's like, all right, you want to handle this? I'll handle it. I'll handle this. And there was no discussion. I think it just naturally kind of formed the way it did.
And then it becomes a control thing too. In fact, in the hallway down here, we were like, we should just call up the guys at Trump and Mitsubishi and be like, here, how much to make these parts? But we've had a couple of times where we needed to sub things out because it was either too big for our equipment or we just didn't have the capabilities. And we're like, it's going to take you how long?
Yeah.
And it's going to be what? And then once or twice it came damaged. I'm like, so now I got to explain. So it comes down to a control thing and like we are those people
quality
like
of work at the end of the day.
Yeah, if we could literally keep everything in house and like then it's our responsibility. If we got to work 100-hour weeks, what it is. So there's that's probably the biggest component of it. We're kind of control freaks.
Do you still have the knot in your stomach on Sundays? Like when you're looking forward to a work week?
I didn't know it was Monday today. So there's not a Sunday because I never know what day it is.
Yeah.
They all just kind of roll together.
He's got the family life. He's got all that. I have it a little more streamlined, but it's 7 days a week. Like if the phone rings, I'm answering it. If email comes through, I'm answering it. And it doesn't feel like I don't have days off, which is nice because at the end of the day, you look at yourself and you're like, I'm working for myself.
It's like it's not 9 to 5, but then again, it's not. You're choosing to be.
If
there.
I have something to do in the morning, he's got something to do in the morning with his kid.
We just go do it.
You do it, and you meet at the shop whenever.
It's 5 to 9, as in AM to PM.
Exactly. It just goes all the time.
There's no hours. There's no. I mean, we have tried kind of over time to be like client hours,
Right.
because some people just. It is what it is, but man.
Do you want to give out your cell numbers right now?
Well, the business phone goes to our cell phone.
That's the worst part. The business line does ring both of us. So like there is times where it's like
you look at it, you're like, you gonna pick that up?
Regular business hours we're always, as long as we're not physically building something, and we'll always get back to anyone who inquires about anything. But it's weird. Like I don't know if it's just the way that certain things go now that a lot of people like 8 o'clock at night on a Saturday, like, I saw this desk on Pinterest. It's like, thanks, trying to eat a nice dinner with my wife. Like,
at the end of the day, it don't matter though. I'm answering that phone and I'll take whatever you got to talk about, because when it comes to our business, it's one of those things where we're not working normal hours. A lot of times we'll get a client that's off hours, either his interior designer or whoever contacts us. They're like, hey, my client hit me up about this, or I saw your thing while I was at work. And, they're going to hit us up at all times of the day. And, that's fine, especially time zones. Time zones is another thing.
Right.
People always say, how much business do you do in Chicago? And we're like,
none.
We haven't done any.
Isn't that crazy?
Really?
It is nutty.
I mean, super minimal.
Yeah,
the majority
a
of
few.
our stuff goes out west, southwest.
Yeah.
And you know what? We were in New York not that long ago too. So, it's like you would assume in the beginning, our first few jobs were like in Chicago, and then grew organically, and it just happened.
Right.
We'd be in Texas, we'd be in LA.
A lot of Florida, California quite a bit too.
We
But
know way too much about logistics now.
it's one of those things that our style kind of lends towards the super
Right.
modern, super
Right.
clean, minimalistic, the whole nine. So I mean, you see a lot of that in the younger generations and all
Yeah.
that. That's going to be California. That's going to be where
Yeah.
everybody's at. So
Yeah. So with you doing what you do now, did you take any type of like metalworking, woodworking type classes during school at all?
No.
should I tell you yes?
So was it available and you just didn't have any desire to or didn't know
we
about
both
it?
went to one of the biggest public schools probably in the state. We went to Stevenson High
Stevens?
School.
Okay, yeah.
And at the time,
And you're not kidding. How big was your graduating class, just to give people an idea?
I want to say around 1,200.
Yeah.
kids.
I'm a couple years older. Mine was slightly smaller. I want to say it was like 1,100.
There you go.
There are kids that I run into people when I lived in Colorado. I would drive for a hotel, and they were like, "Oh, what year did you graduate?" I'm like, "Oh, I graduated in 2004." They're like, "Me too." I'm like, "I have no idea who you are," And he said the same thing. He's like, "I've never seen you in my life." We're like, "Cool," it
Moving
is
on.
what it is.
It's just very common in the
But
school.
yeah, I
that
don't
big.
believe. I mean, they had off-campus things where you go to a tech campus,
like
type
at Lake
thing.
County.
Yeah, and I had a lot of friends that did that, but no, it was never. Like you said, I kind of fell into it. It was never. I always thought it was cool, but I never saw it as a path. I always thought the graphic design, the computers, the whole nine. But as I got into 3D modeling and all that, I'm like, why don't I try to build this? So.
The schools in general, in this overall area here, especially, like they're starting to form some tech schools, some campuses, things like that. But I mean, now I am noticing how old I am very quickly. But during that time period, it was like, no, you're going to college, you're getting your degree, you're doing this. This is your kind of like my entire high school was what college are you going to? What schools are you applying to? What?
Yeah,
so
I was
like
art school, and that was like, well, what are you doing? That's not a college.
yeah, the art school was the art school was the outlier. There wasn't like trade schools, things of that nature weren't even probably why there's a major shortage of those guys right now.
Well, that's one of the reasons I asked the question is in one of the stumbling points tends to be that people kind of expect a wage equivalent to somebody who maybe graduated college if they can find a job.
Absolutely.
So, and that's always an if. There's always a guarantee. So you have these kids come out on welders, and they're just by the hour, depending on where they are. They're not in a major metropolitan area. Could be shocking at what they might get per hour. But to me, like what you represent is kind of the possible end goal. Is like that career path is not necessarily straight. You can diverge off in many different areas, and if you have a skill that is desired and you can actually work at it and do what you want with it, I mean, how can you put a price on that? It's nothing that guidance counselor in high school is going to be able to say like, I think you'll make a great independent business owner with a killer website.
I'll tell you what, that was not the advice that I got from my counselor. My counselor was like, well, what are you doing? Like,
my counselor just said, stop getting in fights, go back to class.
Not in the face. Not in the face.
He goes, I need that for finance.
No, career paths are funny though, right? No matter what you thought you were gonna do, odds are you're probably not gonna end up that way unless you really. That's kind of your. People always talk about passion and things, and some people are, and I'm like, it's just we just kind of ended up in this.
Yeah, and like you said, like if I went from high school and I was like, I'm gonna be a welder or I'm gonna go into the trades of some sort, I don't know if we would have ended up where we're at.
Right.
Right. Branching off this direction, if I was making good money, we always joke it would be nice to get a paycheck. A constant paycheck. Like that'd be great to have. It's great for budgets. It's great for all that. Yeah. You get great paychecks every once in a while. Sometimes you go a couple months without them now.
Right.
But if I was on that path where like you said, you can make some great money in the trades now with skilled work. And if I was on that path, I don't know if I'd diverge off into an independent business.
Right.
I don't know. That'd be a big risk. Yeah. Where at my point, I was freelance, and that's kind of how I fell into it.
Right.
And we'd love to bring people on, but like you said, it's a good wage. If you want somebody that's going to be worth it.
And back to our earlier comment, we're control freaks. Like you are sanding that wrong.
If we're standing there, why am I paying you?
Yeah.
Well, on that theme of education, so obviously you guys have different backgrounds. You found where you are today. So how do you look at maybe continuing education within the fabricating or welding area? Or, how do you stay on top of technology is maybe the similar.
That's a great question. And it probably should be a different path than what we do. But
can't wait for this answer.
No, because I know you guys said you were down to FabTech. We've gone to FabTech numerous times, and we're those weird people who are looking around like, we could make one of those. We could do this.
We always try to find, because everything at FabTech is typically large.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
for us,
Yes.
it's awesome stuff, but not like we don't mass produce. So to put the investment in, you're not getting that money out.
Right.
So it's always like, how do we do that, but at a smaller scale?
Mhm.
You know, and
Got
like
it.
we've done the CNCs and all that, but
Mm-hmm.
when you really dive in deep, it's like, all right, how can we get a bender? How can we do a tube cutter, but not have the CNC tube cutters, but do it easier? And that's when, like you said, we even look at outsourcing, but then you fall into that gray area, which is where we find ourselves falling a lot in the fabrication,
Yeah.
where it's not mass produced. Everything's kind of one off.
Mm-hmm.
So you're looking at higher prices, materials, the whole nine.
Right.
But if you have specialized equipment, you can cut down on that.
Yeah.
You know, when we first started, I mean, what do we use the budget? About 2 months to do a build, right? Unlike
A long time.
Yeah.
And now we're like, we better get that done in this week.
Yeah,
Or-
now we got
Really?
2 weeks. You know, it's a 2 week
Wow.
thing where, well, before finish. But if we can get frame out, everything
Mm-hmm.
ready, top done, and we can get it done in 2 weeks, that's ideal. That's usually a little bit less. Conference tables take a little bit. But the longest time is usually with our clients is in the modeling. You know, because they'll send
design.
they'll send us the quick design, and then we dive in deep. You know, we make sure they get what they pay for at the end of the day. We pride ourselves on the service end of it, and I think that's where we bridge that gap. You know, where people say, "Well, why would I pay that, and why would I go one off?" We try to bridge that gap for those people.
Because we do get that call as well.
Right.
Can you send me your catalog? Like there,
That's a classic one.
there's no catalog. And
I wish I had one.
in fact, I just talked to a prospective client a couple days ago, and they're like, you know, we thought since everything was labeled like on your website, like those were the models. And it was like, honestly, we started labeling things. So when people called and go, you know, that black
That
and green
one.
desk.
Yeah.
I went to numbers for a little bit, and I'm like, I can't keep up with this. This is gonna get lost.
Yeah,
We put 5 more on
Chinese
there.
restaurant. We'll
Yeah.
take the number
It's
55.
what it felt
or the
like.
46.
They were like, how much for
table.
the number 1 with the side of right? Yeah.
Side of wood.
Yeah, we tried to actually, like, for a very short period of time, we would have things organized by like a number sequence, like wood, metal, what size metal. And we both looked at each other, we're like, we're never going to remember this. It's never. Like, it's a good
the
idea.
DiVito Dewey Decimal System.
Well,
Yeah,
it makes sense
it was
when you have a
terrible.
lot of people. It's great to have systems. Don't downplay it. Great to have systems
They're
in
awesome.
place. But when it comes to us and we're looking at each other like, what was that one? You know, or what was this one? It's just easier than like number this to this.
Right.
Even
it's
finding
just
things in
funny.
the shop. He's like,
Yeah.
where did you put that? I'm like, left bin, upstairs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Turn right.
No clue. I wouldn't
How
walk
do
around
you
for
know
years.
that? I'm like, I don't know because I put it away there.
Yeah,
Well,
There you go.
Now, if I had 10 employees to do that with, it's not going to work.
Nah.
Yeah. You'd mentioned earlier before I brought us back, but talking about designing your own CNC like tool. What,
Yeah.
kind of flesh that out for me.
Well, when we first started, all of a sudden we were like, all right, we can't cut all this by hand. Like, we're gonna have to make jigs. We'll have stuff everywhere. It'll be a disaster. And with his background, we're like, all right, we can get into CNC because it's all the file's ready to go. We just need to load it into the G
It's
code
all vector based, you know, at the end of
and
the
let
day,
it
so-
roll. So we found a guy on eBay.
Famous last words.
Wait a minute. Yeah, is that-
Then we
okay.
drove to Indiana. Second worst words. We go and pick up this supposedly ready to roll kit, right? So we're like, oh boy, what do we do? And when we get there, salesman, super nice guy, like any problems, you know, because we're green as green gets at this point. And I think we called him toys before he started calling us idiots. And haven't you ever worked with a CNC machine before? You know?
Clearly, no. Clearly,
Like-
we're idiots.
That's why we're calling you, my man. So we just dove in the deep end and like, well, we have a whole bunch of stuff sitting here. So and then from that we learned to build that. Then we got into the wood router and CNC, and we're like, well, we know how everything works.
I will say that was a big leap, and people that underestimate that leap, from plasma. So you're talking about one axis CNC plasma to milling, however many axes you move to in milling. I was like, oh, it'll be fine. You know, it's the same thing. Speeds, feeds, bits, size, the material, the holdings, all of it. I sat there and I was just like, I'm out of it. I'm done. But then it came to making the pieces work because we had the CNC, but it was pieces, and we were like, what does any of this stuff do? You know, we were looking at each other.
I learned all the electronic side,
Yeah.
and Rob learned all the design and actual functionality of it. And then I was like, all right, how do we build this thing? And then one of our best investments that I still don't know how we got sold on it, honestly, was our welding fixture table.
Oh yeah, I was gonna. Yeah.
Yeah, we fell into that was it was Quantum.
Yeah, and those guys have been absolutely great. We've worked with them for quite a while now, and in fact, they moved locations. We used to have to get everything from California. Now it comes from North Carolina.
Right.
But that thing, having a surface that you know is flat, level, true, and when you put the fixtures on, this is at 90 degrees, this is at 45 degrees. That kind of knowledge, it's basically priceless because.
Right.
We used to do things all the time. You got the angle finder on there, right? Like,
That was
I'll
another
hold it. I'm
trial
at
by
40.
fire.
Tack it there.
Yeah, we thought we could build our own fab table. I think any metal worker that goes through it is like, this is flat. Nothing you buy is flat typically.
Right.
Nothing will stay flat. And then we were like, okay, we'll make a fixture table. You get the CNC program, you cut it out. No, that thing was. I was better off welding on the ground at that point.
That's where things were a little tippy.
Exactly.
Luckily, there's flats.
Well, exactly. There's some parts that are flat. You'll find them, but that's how we. And then we're like, there's got to be a better way. And for what we do, like I said, the one-off stuff, it's tough. You don't want to invest in fixtures. You don't want to have all the holdings because we're doing it one time. I have to hold this piece here one time. I'm done.
I think at the most we've ever made of one piece is like half a dozen.
Yeah,
At
probably
one time.
6 or something. And that's even better when you have fixturing too, but the ability to change it, that was pretty game changing for us, was getting them.
Did you know you needed something like that? How did you come across the table?
Did we know? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Did we know the first time we welded something, I put a fat bead of hot seam on one side and that thing just went
Of
like
the
that.
table?
Oh yeah, well we
No,
were
of
welding. We were welding 4 or 6 by 6.
6 by 6, and
Okay.
this is like we've kind of fallen in and just
Yeah.
made it better along the way and made it work. Because in the beginning,
I think I was welding 1/8 inch to 1/2 inch at that point,
And-
trying to make it work.
I
And you
did-
just see that 1/8 inch tube just,
it was
and I'm like, I don't think that's gonna work.
it was things that if we went to school, an instructor would have been like, "You two,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you are dumb."
If only you guys had the early video of this, right? That would be.
I'm sure they're buried somewhere, but I don't know if they're
They're
coming out.
they're probably on one
need
of those
some
NAS
credibility.
drives that has been like
Oh, yeah.
slowly
Yeah.
pushed to the back. Like,
No, we got
The last remaining Betamax tape.
Yeah, that old.
we're definitely not the guys that are afraid to admit though. Like, yeah, we learned this trial by fire. Like, stuff that you're getting from us is going to be good because we're control freaks and we don't like stuff that looks terrible going out. Like, that's not the name we want. So given that there's two of us, like,
the QC is crazy, like when there's 2 of you and you're the ones doing it.
Yeah.
And you're the one that's going to answer the phone call when that person's upset. You're making sure that thing's good.
Right.
I
How do
think that
you,
might play
at
into
this
it.
point, how do you maintain final QC check against maybe the original specs or what was agreed upon? What are the key elements of that?
That's where Fusion is far and above my favorite thing.
Yeah.
I start there and I end there.
Mm-hmm.
We send them fully detailed 3D renderings, size. Everything is on point in there. Everything is built to size. So I use that as my blueprint too for all my cut files, all my milling. Everything comes out of Fusion 360. So we're sending them that file. We have measured designs, everything that's in there to tell them this is what you're getting.
Right.
So at the end of the day, he always laughs because we look at each other and we go, "Hey, it looks like the picture."
that's the
Like-
best. That's the best. No, that's the best compliment we
customer
get.
would look at it the same
Right.
way, though.
That's
Right?
the best compliment we get. I'm telling you,
100%.
I can't tell you how many businesses that we've gone to put in like a conference table. The first look is, you two are installing it? Yes, we designed it so we can bring it in. Second,
Is that when you take off the red noses?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Bunch of clowns rolling in. Coming out of the tight car too.
was it Missouri that we drove that whole load down to? I always
Oh,
get this
yeah.
wrong. It was Mississippi.
Yeah, it was Mississippi.
Because I kept saying Missouri, and he goes, "There's no way it's taking us 12 hours to get to Missouri." It was an argument back and forth. But
while
we
we
get
were driving too.
Yeah.
we get down there, and the designer who had purchased the pieces for the place goes, "It's only you two?"
We're like, that bad?
Yeah.
That's not good.
Like, to us, we were like, "Oh boy, this is gonna go terrible." It went great in the end, but it was. But the best compliment is still when it's set up. Wow, that really looks like the picture.
Yeah.
Well, that was the goal.
Yeah,
if it
and
didn't-
honestly, I'm like, wait, I could have gotten away with less. Like, what could I have delivered? I don't know.
It's balsa wood.
Yeah, right. Like,
You didn't specify.
yeah.
There is always that in the back of your head, right? Like, so what were you willing to
Yeah,
accept?
no.